Hello there, my name is Lawrence Oliver Bignell. I'm Programme Leader for BA Honours Digital Animation at University Centre South Essex, and I'm here to give you a very special little tutorial on character design. Thank you very much for having me, Havering College. See you in a sec.
Oh, look at this lovely intro. Just to be absolutely clear, you can do all of these activities on here, either traditionally, digitally, or tredigitally. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
What is a character designer? Well, a character designer is a person who creates the entire concept, style, and artwork of a character. You need to have a deep understanding of who or what your character is first before you do any of this. There's plenty of places that you can look at to go and create your character. Pixar in a Box, for instance, has a fantastic set of resources that you can use online, and it's hosted by the Khan Academy, which you can find linked within this video, and I will also provide a little couple of documents that you can look through at your leisure. They go through everything from writing down who your character is, what best describes them, the different things in their kind of lives that have meant the most to them, that kind of stuff. It's all really good stuff. This character lineup sheet is from the film Aladdin. As you can see, each of these characters has been given some really specific and detailed kind of markers. Now, it doesn't look necessarily detailed in the writing kind of context, but each of these is laid up against each other, so you can see not only how small and tall these characters are, but how each of these individual characters has their own unique style and shape that accompanies them. And this is going to be very important for when we look at the next couple of examples. Next little image here is from Monsters Inc. And I hope you can tell which characters are which, as I'm going to kind of do here. I'm going to do a little kind of marker for Mike and Sully here. Of course, not only do you have to take into consideration shape and size of each of these characters to give it a more kind of interesting and organic look, you need to think about the colour, and colour is incredibly important. See how each of these kind of works on kind of each other. Mike and Sully are kind of neutral but friendly kind of shades of their respective blue and green, whereas the yellow monster to the right looks a little bit more kind of garish and in your face. These colours are known as complementary colours. Complementary colours are colours that are usually found opposite each other in the colour wheel. So if we were to put up a colour wheel on screen now, you can see that the opposite for yellow would be purple, or therefore the complementary colour for yellow would be purple. The complementary colour for blue would be orange, and the complementary colour for green would be red, or red would be green, and vice versa. Up. Again, incredibly simple designs here. Carl Fredrickson is literally a rectangle. Eleanor, or Ellie, his wife, is a nice kind of neutral circle, mainly exacerbated in her huge head when she was a child. And this little character down here, Lewis, which I'm going to correct in a second, is actually our little character Russell. He was originally called Lewis in very early versions of the script. The dog, Doug, of course, is the opposite shape to Russell. This is to, again, complement the kind of dynamism between these two characters. It is intentional, you know. Our little kind of chap here, Russell, is meant to be kind of approachable and loving. You know, this is why he's got a more rounded triangle shape to him. But Doug here is, the opposite to that, a little bit dim, so he has a smaller kind of cranium. As you can see here, the bird design is really quite different from the rest, and deliberately so. The size of the bird has been put into essentially three little sections here. The teeniest section for the head, and the biggest section is made for the neck and the legs, and these are actually pretty much an equal length in size. We do have a little break in the middle with that triangle, This is a little bit more rounded in the final design, but he's meant to be this mischievous character, this almost kind of hard to pin down, kind of like whether he's good and whether she's good, whether she's bad kind of design. So the bird here is deliberately done differently, just to stand out from the rest of the cast of characters here. Very, very nice. And this is something that you could start to think about with your character designs. You could start to think about how these are going to work off each other, how they're going to look alongside each other, especially if you're creating a character design that's for an entire cast. These are symbols that we read. So the small shapes that we see here are representative of something within the character. The character design overall should give us what is known as semiotics, or the way that we read shapes and symbols. You put a badge on a cowboy, they instantly become a sheriff. It doesn't matter whether that badge says sheriff or not, they are a sheriff. And more explicitly here, it's a massive factor in the design to the characters in Inside Out. Again, here we see color play a massive role. Each character has a corresponding, or a color that accompanies the particular emotion. Again, this is from a Western perspective. Not all cultures will have the same perspective within them. The red that you see kind of represented by anger is going to be perhaps seen very, very differently in other kind of parts of the world. For example, the red in Chinese culture means happiness, success, and good fortune. This is usually accompanied by some shade of gold or yellow. However, the colour red is associated in very, very different ways between each and every culture. So this, from our Western perspective, are the colours that we would associate with, anger, disgust, joy, sadness, and fear. I would like to give a shout out here to the wonderful Pete Doctor. He is a wonderful visionary. Apart from those examples from films that we know and love, you will be able to kind of see how we can create characters from scratch using 3 simple shapes. And those very simple shapes are the circle, the square, and the triangle, both pointing upwards and downwards. Now, I'm going to show you the 3D variants here. Of course, so a 3D circle is a sphere, a 3D square is a cube, or a cuboid, or rectangular cuboid, or however you want to kind of call it, a prismatic cuboid. You may also want to kind of take note of the triangle, which is in turn created into the square-based pyramid, the conical or circular-based pyramid, and the triangular-based pyramid, which looks eerily similar to the square-based pyramid there. For the triangle pointing down, it's basically the same thing. However, from the bottom, they look a little something like this. So, square-based, circular-based, and triangular-based. This is all great and all, but what do these shapes all mean? Hey guys, activity time here. You should produce at least 3 different portraits based on the following shapes: a circle, a square, a triangle pointing upwards, and a triangle pointing downwards. You can do this traditionally or digitally, or even tradigitally, where you can start off in the traditional format, scan it in, and then finish it off on the computer in either Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint EX. When you're done, email this to your tutors, and it'll find its way over to me somehow, guys, and I'll give you some feedback on what you've done. Good luck. Best of luck.
If you took the time to pause the video and do the activity, great, awesome, welcome back. If you didn't and you're just playing on, awesome, welcome back anyway.
So these are your 4 shapes as I've shown you before. Your circle, your square, your triangle pointing up and down, or down and up, as I've got them here. And these are the specific kind of semiotics, or the ways that we can read these shapes that I can think of. You're more than welcome to think of more, and in fact, I'm going to encourage you to think of more. The circle here represents a safe, more feminine kind of look, i.e., we associate feminine kind of features with more rounded, more kind of like motherly kind of features. Soft, nice, if I can use that word. I know the English teachers aren't going to be particularly happy with that word, nice, and friendly. The square here is a much more masculine kind of looking kind of shape, wider, more broad, perhaps even more kind of muscular. Even though we associate muscles with squares, muscles are actually quite round. It's a weird way that we kind of look at these things. However, to go on with the square here, we've got a more structured and solid and more sturdy, strong kind of foundation here. So the character that would have this particular body type, or the beginnings of a body type, would have a stronger kind of personality that reflects this character design. Again, square-based characters tend to be more dependable. A triangle pointing down would be more masculine, whereas a triangle pointing up would be more feminine. The reason for this is, if you imagine the triangle pointing down as a bodybuilder's shoulders going down to a tiny, tiny waist, we kind of associate that, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of body type, whereas the more feminine kind of body type here refers to perhaps a smaller kind of like upper body and a more kind of rounded birth giving kind of hips kind of going down to the wider base of that triangle there. It also represents sharp, fast, dangerousness, and dumb kind of aspects to both these triangle shapes as well. Sid the Sloth from Ice Age, for instance, is a triangle pointing up. Again, you can have some interesting connotations from these character designs, but not all character designs have this one singular shape to them, and as we go on in this video, you'll see that for a fact. Let's look at some pure kind of just circle, square, triangle kind of designs. So here I'm just doing your bog standard kind of round kind of person here. So here they are a rather stout kind of person. Again, I've not kind of taken too much consideration into the waist of this character because they've got to be all kind of round kind of bodied, but they've got tiny little legs, and I thought it would just be quite kind of amusing to have a character with very kind of short features, apart from the arms. One of my characters that I've drawn for ages now in my spare time kind of has that exact body type. The more kind of muscular built strong character here has a more kind of defined kind of square formation to them, and again they're a little bit kind of like longer in the kind of the lower body than our kind of circular character, just by definition there, as you can see where the waist and the pelvis area kind of tapers down into the legs. And I've also carried on the square mantra into the hands there, just to kind of like complete that whole package. We also have a kind of shorter, kind of more kind of boxed like head kind of in there. The triangle ones, I've kind of always really enjoyed triangle designed characters. One, because they're quite difficult and they're therefore a challenge to me to do. But I also just like how dynamic and fast and quick and angular they all look. That could literally be a character from a program called Reboot. That is way before your time, guys. So if you're interested in really awful 3D animations, please look up Reboot. The triangle pointing up, though, is a different matter, kind of very much like a Starman kind of style character, if anyone is familiar with the Starman kind of computer game series there. But I digress. Very kind of angular, sharp, quick kind of looking kind of characters there. Awesome stuff. As I'm going through here, I'm also mindful that the triangle pointing down kind of mantra should be reversed in terms of the hips. See how the top of the triangle pointing down, i.e. the base, points down into a triangle pointing up. These opposites allow us to give our character shape more dynamism, more movement and flow. And flow is a very, very important term that we should use for this. Very quick kind of little thing here. So you can actually bring that mantra of the triangles kind of into the face here. So I'm just going to do some really quick squiggles here and speed it up so it's not taking up too much of your time. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start kind of drawing a character just from scratch, and I'm not going to adhere to kind of any kind of use of silhouetting or lines of action kind of in here. And those are two terms that are going to pop up on your side kind of here. But your line of action is basically you're choosing a place for your character to go. It's always better to have a doing word or a verb kind of in place for when you're doing an action pose. Verbs are much more useful than adjectives when you're posing your characters. You know, the most important thing when you are doing this is what are your characters doing, and you know, if you can, why? You know, you're getting your adverbs in there. Why are they doing that action? You know, they've got to have a reason for doing that action. Otherwise, you know, this drawing feels, you know, far too pointless. My verb for this particular one is drinking coffee, or drinking would be the word. Drinking and standing, if you were to use two verbs, and drinking and standing whilst waiting for something to happen here. So what is happening here is I am using the greater than and less than symbols that you may have used in your maths classes to give me a better idea about the perspective lines on my character. So when you have a character kind of looking, as this character is, at a 3/4 angle, you should be using the greater than and less than signs. They represent your vanishing point, essentially, on a curved surface. Very, very important to get these right as well, because that will just add a much greater sense of depth and dynamism. Again, I'm going to use the word dynamism into your characters. When drawing the legs, I tend to think, and the arms in general, I tend to think of balls on the end of sticks, especially for all the joints. Some of you may already use this in your art classes already, especially if you do any life drawing or if you just do character design in your spare time anyway. I like to think of everything as, first of all, in the 2D sense, and then apply it into a 3D world. So what you're going to see here is the feet taking shape in the form of little rectangular cuboids, and the legs and the arms will start to take shape in terms of in cylinder shapes. You might want to think of them as sausages, but specifically cylinders, because the cylinders have a top and a bottom, and you've got to think of where they're going to be placed in terms of the perspective in your eye line. It becomes very, very important when you're doing your character designs, and it really important for good drawing in general to think of where your different body parts will be in terms of your eye line, and then stuff starts to make much more sense. This will be something that we will go through on the course as we look at life drawing skills and just general kind of good practice drawing skills in general. If there was any book that I would recommend to start off just thinking about drawing, is Walt Stanchfield's set of books that he did with Walt Disney. And you can see that link come up down the bottom there. I actually have these on hand constantly during my classes just because I love them so much. Something that I begin to kind of talk about here is that you should avoid tangents, and tangents are lines that come together at a point. They're boring. Get rid of them. Don't have them. You know, each line that you draw will have some sort of overlap to it. It will have some sort of clear idea of where it needs and should go, and so you should avoid tangents at all costs. Where the two lines kind of meet there to create the elbow that I've done there, that's fine because it's representing an elbow and therefore isn't a boring line. It's not a pointless line. But when you have these lines that come together in such a boring kind of unnatural way, you should find it in yourself to give it much more gravitas. And here, as I kind of explain or draw in this case, the lines that you're going to see kind of indicate that the forearm is in front of the top part of your arm, or you might want to think of it as the part where your humerus is. Again, I'm going to take into consideration the shape of the top part of my body, kind of where the chest kind of area is, my character.
Here it should be noted that you should adhere to the surface lines of the rounded areas of the characters as well, because that will give you a greater sense of depth. Surface lines are one of the principles of perspective.
And again, I've done the same thing here, where the top part of the arm, or the part of the arm where your humerus is representing a higher kind of plane, or the fact that it is actually on top of your forearm there. Again, I'm just going to give like a really kind of like rough run through about eyes, and think of your eyes essentially as little spheres that lay slightly inset within your eyes. The actual kind of eye socket itself goes into the face, and therefore should have some of the most kind of shaded kind of parts of your kind of skull anatomy there. And everything that is on the head is literally on the head, or placed on top of the skin of the head. So stuff like the nose, that'll be something that is added on afterwards. Now there are really, really awesome ways that you can draw on noses. If you're not particularly good at drawing on noses, you can think of noses, for example, as a combination of a circle for the end of it and a triangular based pyramid. Really, 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 really nice and simple. And you can even have like a couple of balls for the nostrils there. Also, don't forget like really little details, like a cup here, literally a cup. What I've done with this character is I've used lots and lots of circles, but then I've added in the more rectangular shapes, and this gives this character a bit of a much more kind of dynamic look. Like, not only is he kind of friendly and nice and approachable, but he also has that jagged edge, that square kind of edge to him. That means that he's perhaps dependable, or the fact that they are more rounded squares, that he's dependable, but perhaps a little bit more flexible in what he will do with his time. So he's a bit of a chill dude. You might want to think of him there. And the mark of any good kind of illustration, or the beginning of a character design, I think, is when you start clearing everything up, because things start to look quite nice then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed up this part so you can see the progression at double speed, or maybe more than double speed. See you in a bit. What's doubly good about character design is you can literally start from any shape and then make a character from it. And you don't have to have particularly the best imagination in the entire world. If you have a TV at your disposal, then use that TV to its advantage. Draw when you're watching things. If you like sports, I love a bit of boxing or MMA, because the way that the fighters move and position their bodies is absolutely perfect for life drawing study, or at least drawing study. So even if you are kind of particularly into sports, like, draw from those kind of examples. I know there tends to be some sort of sniffiness between artists and sports, but don't don't listen to that stuff. You know, open up your minds and your lives to these things, and you know the benefits and the rewards are there. You know, like here I was looking at some old kind of pictures of Gary Lineker kind of off to the side because why not? And I thought, hey, let's just exaggerate everything that I can see here. And to me, at least, he had a larger kind of forehead. But again, taking kind of cues from other kind of influences. Again, this character is more of a board, kind of a board head, board-headed character, based off of a more kind of rectangular design. Something that I encourage my students to do as well is to look at all kinds of angles that you can draw your character from. So not just face on and not just three-quarter kind of view on, but side on as well. Now, some people will actually find side on views much easier than any other kind of view. There was a glut in the early 2000s of these side-on kind of view drawings. I think particularly kind of influenced by the Demon Days front cover by the band Gorillaz, which, hey, Jimmy Hewlett is an awesome artist, but I think some people needed to get some other influences here. But either way, this drawing of this kind of more female kind of base character is kind of in a similar style. And you should absolutely have some sort of range of influences and kind of references that you're going to be drawing from, because otherwise you have ideas and drawing styles that are devoid of any kind of research and honing down. And you know, you should have someone that you should look up to when you're doing these things. You know, have some sort of idol. You know, even if it's someone like Lowish, who's more kind of contemporary, or someone like Bern Hogarth would be more kind of classical. His set of books are absolutely stellar, and Lowish anyway. She's such a lovely lass. We met her last kind of Vertex event, which was I believe in February. And, she gave a really awesome kind of talk on her career and where she came from and where she got to essentially, and a lot of hard work and a lot of graft. And she gave my students some really awesome advice about kind of starting up their own businesses and getting their drawings kind of out there, because hey, some of them need it and you guys need it too. So here I look into some sizing of my character's head, for instance. Now, heads for your character designs is going to be incredibly important, because it's a window into this person's world. The head will tell a lot about a character that a body may not, and vice versa. It should ideally be the entire package, but I'll focus on the head as a starting point. So I'm going to use some of these lines that initially will tangent, but then I will kind of manipulate them slightly just by putting them just slightly off that tangent line. But I'm going to make this quite kind of a burly dude here. Be this a potential design that you could kind of emulate for a future kind of task that I'll set you. It's entirely up to you. But this second drawing here is a lot thinner and longer in its design. It's a bit more kind of pompous in its approach, and it's a bit of fun. I kind of was looking at Easter Island head statues for that particular one, so that's a little extra one. This next part will go into silhouettes and silhouetting. So silhouettes are incredibly important. When you're creating your designs based off of the silhouette, you're basically looking for variation in your design, and you want to make your characters as clear and distinct from each other as possible. The top left and the bottom design are quite similar in the shapes that I've used there, and it was deliberately so. The top left one is going to be this weird and wacky kind of character with some quite fancy hair, whereas the character below is going to be this little kind of burly character who perhaps has come back from the army. He is drastically different in the way that he looks to the character in the top left. However, in terms of the way the shapes are dynamically kind of made, it's not enough of a differentiation or of a difference within the initial silhouettes. So in a character lineup, as we kind of saw before with the Aladdin and Up and Inside Out characters, it would perhaps be a little bit too similar and therefore a little bit more of the same that we need to get away from. Another awesome thing about silhouetting is you can, create characters really, really quickly from just, a couple of lines. Now, these two characters here go in completely separate directions. Just, from a standpoint, one is, this kind of ragtag kind of, brutal punk, and then another is this strange-looking kind of female character. So make of that what you will. But here I'm just using the dynamics of the initial kind of shapes, the circle and the cuboid kind of shape of the head, which is your basic kind of shape of the head, and the basic kind of almost bored, slightly coffin-like shape of the head for the female character on the right there. Her body kind of mimics what the head does. The hair kind of up in a ponytail there, or at least in a bun, kind of mimics the opposite of what the head is doing. So the larger part of the shape occurs first, whereas the smaller part of the shape occurs on top rather than the bottom of the head. I've also given her some quite nice kind of large ears because why not? So moving on from those previous drawings, in order to get decent variance in your character design, you need to start thinking of your characters from a really, really basic, simple level. Now here I've just used the examples of squares and rectangles and trapeziums as a starting point. But you can get some really, really interesting character sizes and traits from just varying these things up, in the way that I'm kind of doing here. Starting these off is nice and simple. You've got 3 squares or rectangles, could be it, whatever you want to make of those. Here I've then varied it by one simple method, and that's smallest to biggest. The next change is I've then taken the bottom and put it on the top. I put the head in the middle, and I put the middle section at the bottom. And there we can start to give ourselves a more interesting design. Now, does that make all the designs that you're going to do like this interesting? No, certainly not. Take it as a form of experimentation rather than this is an absolute kind of rule to do, although it is highly encouraged. This particular method has helped me out more times than not, really. I highly, highly recommend if you're stuck for just any kind of character design, then this is going to be the way to go. Again, like everything here, you can do this with a bit of paper over the top and a bit of a light box, or some sort of light source underneath it. You can even just put a bit of paper on a window if you don't have a light box to hand, because I know not everyone does. I certainly do not in my home at this moment in time. However, even if you just got these shapes on the right and you've got this on a piece of paper on the left, it's always better to have like some sort of frame of reference for what you're drawing on. Be it on your phone or your computer, or just some sort of device or book. It's all good. Here I've just gone through the little kind of design process of this little character. So just giving him, kind of like a little small body, a big large head. The head kind of implies that he is quite stocky and sturdy. The circle of the nose kind of implies that he's perhaps a little. He's actually quite a nice guy, maybe inside. Although the angulature of the mouth would show that he's quite kind of loud-mouthed in his approach. Small body, perhaps, would reflect him being quite fragile, and his wide open legs would, basically kind of give off a, come on if you think you're hard enough kind of attitude. Again, a nice guy and sturdy, resilient, forthright, but perhaps someone that you don't want to annoy. Carrying on the mantra of kind of lots of big heads, I I'm just gonna give you some advice about heads. Again, it's about varying up that design. Here, the craniums are going to be kind of big and small, or the opposite way around. I would advise just drawing loads and loads of just different variations of a circle and a square. Um, Everyone should already be drawing their skulls like this. Already starting them off, thinking of them as a 3D form as well. So not just in these 2D kind of sections. You know, draw out a sphere, draw out a rectangle or a square. You know, these things are incredibly important because your characters don't just exist on this piece of paper in 2D, they exist within their own three-dimensional world. And it's really, really important that you kind of understand that for what you're doing in the future. So if you are interested in character design, there's no better way than to start off thinking about your characters as three-dimensional objects or within a three-dimensional world. This one I tried to think of how much detail can I get within such a small space, and this amount of space is exactly right. Again, these different heads are kind of much the same, but a lot more simple, a lot less kind of effort put into these ones. But it just goes to show that a little bit of practice goes a long, long way. So please, 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 when you are designing your characters, make sure that you practice, practice, practice. Okay, activity time. You got to design a character around the word builder. You can be as free as you want as long as you follow these three little rules here. So you can recognize them as a builder, and you have to recognize them as a builder, and it must be a non-fiction creature. Any creature from the non-fiction world you can use 100%. I don't want any fictional creatures, please. And most of all, have fun. Be as weird and as wacky as you can with the way that these characters look. I'm looking for the best looking, most awesome, weird and wacky builders that you can possibly do. Good luck, everyone. Okay. What did we learn, guys? Well, we learned that shapes have meanings. The word for the meaning of shapes and symbols when we read them, or how we read shapes and symbols, is called semiotics. And we learned how to create nice, lovely and simple character designs from just a few little kind of lines on a piece of paper. Of course, starting off with our circles, squares and triangles. Each of these should be thought of in a three-dimensional kind of way, and you should try and draw from as many kind of different places in terms of research and influence as you possibly can, because only then will we truly have fantastic and awesome character design. Thank you very much, guys. This has been an introduction to character design with Lawrence Oliver Bignell.
And if you have any questions, I'll endeavour to get back to you in due course. Thank you very much for stopping by, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.